All right, good evening, everybody. So today we are going to solve another set of wonderful Para Jumble questions from CAT 2023, slot 1, 2, and 3. Now, we have done Para Jumble questions from 2025 set. In CAT 2024, we did not get any Para Jumble questions. Right, so this is the reason why we are skipping 2023 and we are moving back to 2023. 24 में कोई पैराजम्बल questions नहीं आए थे, so we are discussing 23. We are skipping 2024. So there were two parajumble questions in each set. In all, we have 6 questions from slot 1, slot 2, and slot 3, right? I'll quickly share the PPT with you so that you can have a look at the question, and then we'll understand and discuss each question at length. Yeah. So, all right. As always, the question says that, decide on the proper sequencing of the order of sentences. So 4 sentences are given below. You have to decide on a proper sequence and then key in the sequence of the 4 numbers, right? Let's go quickly without wasting any time to the first question. Now, the first question says, what precisely are the unusual elements that make a particular case so attractive to a certain kind of audience? It is a question-minded, right? And then it says it might be a particularly savage or unfathomable level of depravity. Very often it has something to do with the precise amount of mystery involved. Unsolved and perhaps unsolvable cases offer something that ordinary murder doesn't. Why are some crimes destined for perpetual re-examination and others locked into permanent obscurity? Now, look at sentence number 4. It asks a question. It is clearly the central question, and it sets the stage. It sets the stage where it says, starting anywhere else would feel like answering a question nobody has even asked yet. So 4 has to come first, which says, why are some crimes destined for perpetual re-examination and others locked into perpetual obscurity? Now, okay, let me just quickly connect my writing pad to the laptop so that I can, underline words of importance. Okay. Now, set number 4 is, this is a question which clearly sets the central stage where it says, why are some crimes destined for perpetual re-examination and others locked into permanent obscurity? And then now we have to look for direct answers to this question. Where are we going to find the answer? The first answer is in sentence number 2 that says it might be a particularly savage or unfathomable level of depravity. Very often it has something to do with the precise amount of mystery involved. Look at the words. Precise amount of mystery involved. शब्दों को देखो किस चीज के बारे में बात कर रहे हैं. Notice when it says it might be. See? It says it might be a particularly savage or unfathomable level. Now, this is offering a possible reason. It's a perfect follow-up sentence to a question, right? एक possible answer दे रहा है sentence number 2. Then the next thing that we have to do is we have to search for some continuation or some refinement of what has been said in sentence number 2. Where sentence 2 says it might be a particularly savage or unfathomable level of depravity, sentence number 3 says unresolved and perhaps unsolvable cases. Now, this sentence zooms in on one specific factor which is mentioned in sentence number 2. What is that? I just circled. The word is mystery. Look at this word, mystery, right? It deepens the explanation. कैसे deepen कर रहा है? वो बोल रहा है unresolved and perhaps unsolvable cases offer something that ordinary murders doesn't, right? So इस mystery को वो और ज्यादा zoom in कर रहा है. It deepens the explanation which is given here, right? Then after that, step, now if you look at the last sentence, which is sentence number 1, this says, what precisely are the unusual elements that make a particular case so attractive to a certain kind of audience? Now, this is slightly broader and more abstract. It feels like a summary, like a generalization of the idea already discussed. So it wraps up things by, reframing the discussion and coming to a full circle in conceptual terms. So सबसे पहले 4 ने क्वेश्चन पूछा, 3 ने उसका आंसर, सेंटेंस नंबर 2 ने उसका आंसर दिया. 2 ने उसका आंसर दिया. It might be a particularly savage or unfathomable level of depravity. Then comes 3. So 3 says, it talks about the unresolved, unsolvable cases, right? And then comes 1. Now, देखो यहाँ पे क्या कर रहा है क्वेश्चन. क्वेश्चन बोल रहा है reasons. फिर क्वेश्चन ने बोला स्पेसिफिक केसेस, है ना? और फिर क्वेश्चन ने क्या किया? जनरल रैप अप is what they're doing. It's like zooming in and then zooming out with a camera, right? So in such cases, you have to find out the starting point. You have to find out the the broad impact that the entire paragraph has. So there's a question, there is a reason that the question is asking. Why are some crimes destined for perpetual re-examination? Reason पूछा, फिर हमने उसका एक एक possible answer दिया, it might be बोल करके, और फिर हमने एक स्पेसिफिक केस के बारे में बात करी, एक जनरल फॉर्म में हमने रैप अप किया. ओके, पैराग्राफ का फ्लो क्या है? पैराग्राफ का फ्लो है स्पेसिफिक टू जनरल. दैट्स द थॉट फ्लो. ऑलराइट, ओके. नाउ आगे चलते हैं. लेट्स गो टू द नेक्स्ट वन. ओके, फाइंड अगेन. स्टेप 1 क्या करना है हमें? वी हैव टू फाइंड an introduction. We have to find something which is broad in context, which is talking about something in general. We have to figure out a starting point, right? Now, let's read the sentences. Algorithms hosted on the internet are accessed by many, so biases in AI models have resulted in much larger impact, adversely affecting far larger group of people. Now, this doesn't sound like an opening sentence, right? It's referring to something. Second says, though algorithmic bias is the popular term, the foundation of such bias is not algorithms, but in the data. Algorithms are not biased, data is, as algorithms merely reflect persistent patterns that are present in the training data. Then it says, despite the widespread impact, it is relatively easier to multiply AI biases than human-generated biases, as it is simpler to identify the former than to try to make people unlearn behavior learned over generations. And sentence number 4 says, hold on, I'll have to move my screen because it's covering the question. So sentence 4 says, the impact of biased decisions made by humans is localized and geographically confined. But with the advent of AI, the impact of such decisions is spread over a much wider scale. Now, the impact of biased decisions. It says, look over here, the impact of biased decisions made by humans is localized and geographically confined, but with the advent of AI, the impact of such decisions is spread over a much wider scale. So now, look at sentence number 4. Sentence number 4 is the best opener line. Let's discuss why. One, because it introduces the core theme. What is it? The bias between human versus AI. Number 2, it sets up a contrast framework. Local versus wide impact. दो चीजों के बारे में बात कर रहा है. And it is not dependent on any earlier sentence जहां दो है, despite है, you know. सो कोई या कोई पुराना रेफरेंस है कि हमें कोई सेंटेंस चाहिए. दिस इज अ स्टैंड अलोन इंडिपेंडेंट ब्यूटिफुल सेंटेंस. नाउ इन सेंटेंस नंबर 1 जो है वो क्या कर रहा है, वो एक्सटेंड कर रहा है इस कॉन्ट्रास्ट को बहुत लॉजिकली. क्या कह रहा है सेंटेंस 1? एल्गोरिथम्स होस्टेड ऑन द इंटरनेट आर accessed by many, so biases in AI models have resulted in much larger impact, adversely affecting far larger group of people. Now, look at this sentence. This is a direct continuation of sentence 4. Why? Because sentence 4 बात कर रहा है human bias की, है ना. और इसीलिए उस human bias की बात कर रहा है, और इसीलिए उसने क्या बोला कि वो localized है, वो local है और वो confined है. बट AI bias कैसा है? AI bias जो है वो वाइड स्प्रेड है, उसका लार्जर इम्पैक्ट है. सो AI bias, ये वर्ड है, AI bias जो है उसका लार्जर इम्पैक्ट है, लार्जर ग्रुप ऑफ पीपल को कर रहा है, विच मीन्स कि ये क्या है, ये वाइड स्प्रेड है. राइट. देन it completes the comparison that started in 4 and now it has reached 1. Now, अब आगे चलते हैं और इस चीज का एक रूट कॉज क्या है वो ढूंढने की कोशिश करते हैं, कोई एक्सप्लेनेशन होगा इस बात का. राइट. लुक एट सेंटेंस नंबर 2. सेंटेंस नंबर 2 uses the word although algorithmic bias is the popular term. Now the paragraph shifts from impact to cause. सो स्टेटमेंट नंबर 2 क्या है? स्टेटमेंट नंबर 2 जो है वो कॉज है, ये हमें कॉज बता रहा है. ये कॉज क्या है यहां पर? एंड इट क्लैरिफाइज दैट द बायस इज नॉट इन एल्गोरिथम्स बट इन डेटा. देखो, एल्गोरिथम्स आर नॉट बायस्ड, डेटा इज. लुक एट दिस. उसने इस बात का रीजन दिया कि एल्गोरिथम बायस नहीं होता है, डेटा है, as algorithms merely reflect persistent patterns that are present in the training data. So this is like, more logically deepening, और ज्यादा उसको डीप कर रहा है, उस लॉजिक को, कॉज को डीपली बता रहा है, कॉन्ट्रास्ट नहीं कर रहा है. And then now let's look at the last sentence, which is like, looking forward for a conclusion. Despite their widespread impact, what is there? Ask yourself, what is there? Despite their widespread impact, it is relatively easier to multiply AI biases than human generated biases. Now, the last sentence is a clear, beautiful conclusion because one, it says despite their widespread impact. It refers back to the earlier discussion that we were already talking about. It adds to a solution oriented impact. क्या solution दे रहा है वो यहाँ पर? Than identify the former than try to make people unlearn behavior learned over generations. तो ये यहाँ पे क्या है? यहाँ पे ये solutions दे रहा है हमको, right? And hence this is an insight into solution. So 4, 1, 2, 3 is the sequence for this question. अब देखो, सेंटेंस नंबर 4 ने कॉन्टेक्स्ट बनाया, सेंटेंस नंबर 1 ने स्केल कंपैरिजन किया. किस किस का? ह्यूमन बायस का और एआई बायस का. राइट. उसके बाद स्टेटमेंट नंबर 2 ने एक रूट कॉज ढूंढा उसका, और स्टेटमेंट नंबर 3 ने उसको कंक्लूड करा, क्या करके? सोल्यूशन प्रोवाइड करके कंक्लूड करा. राइट. सो देन यहां पर एग्जाम में ऐसा हो सकता है कि बहुत सारे स्टूडेंट्स जो हैं वो सेंटेंस 2 से स्टार्ट कर दें, क्योंकि सेंटेंस 2 जो है वो बायस को डिफाइन कर रहा है और हमें लगता है कि दिस शुड बी द ओपनिंग सेंटेंस. सो बट प्लीज बी केयरफुल that sentence number 2 begins with the word though, which signals a contrast. It doesn't give us an introduction, right? Although ऐसा कोई हार्ड एंड फास्ट रूल नहीं है कि दो से सेंटेंस नहीं शुरू हो सकता, बट जनरली स्पीकिंग पैराग्राफ्स में दो जो है वो किसी सेंटेंस से किसी प्रीव्यू के बाद आता है, राइट? सेंटेंस नंबर 3 भी हमें लग सकता है कि ओके व्हाई कांट सेंटेंस नंबर 3 ओपन, बट सेंटेंस नंबर 3 begins with the word despite and it needs a prior context. All right? Okay. Now, क्या करना है? How do you look at the question? There's a problem landscape. There's a magnification of the problem. Then there is a diagnosis happening. And then there is a hopeful exit through the conclusion. So that's how you have to look at it. Right? Let's move to question number 3. Let's read the question together. Like the ants that make up a colony, no single neuron holds complex information like self-awareness, hope, or pride. Although the human brain is not yet understood enough to identify the mechanism by which emergence functions, most neurobiologists agree that complex interconnections among the parts give rise to qualities that belong only to the whole. Nonetheless, the sum of all neurons in the nervous system generate complex human emotions like fear, joy, none of which can be attributed to a single neuron. Human consciousness is often called an emergent property of the human brain. Now, look at sentence number 4. Out of all these sentences, the fourth sentence that says human consciousness is often called an emergent property of the human brain. This sentence is the core concept. This is an introduction. This gives an emergence clearly. This introduces the topic clearly. It is not dependent. No pronoun dangling mid-air ki okay, किस pronoun को refer कर रहा है. A clear introductory independent sentence, right? So this begins the sequence. Now look for a natural illustration कि क्या example हो सकता है. Sentence 1 देखो, like the ant that make up a colony, no single neuron holds complex information like self-awareness, hope, or pride. Like the ant that make up a colony. ये क्या है? Like the ants. This is a classic analogy that the author is trying to express. Like the ants that make up a colony. This is an analogy that the author is trying to make, right? Which means colony is not equal to any single ant. Similarly, consciousness is not equal to any single neuron, right? It's all a lot of neurons put together. So the always remember this rule. Analogy will work best after an idea is introduced. Idea introduction के बाद analogy introduce करना is always relevant, is always a better way to express. Okay, so for one, then comes extend the. अब हमें क्या करना है? Let's read sentence number 3. Nonetheless, the sum of all neurons in the nervous system generate complex human emotions like fear or joy, none of which can be attributed to a single neuron. यही बात यहाँ से कंटिन्यू हुई है. No single neuron holds complex information. यही बात यहाँ से आगे कंटिन्यू हुई है. So nonetheless might look tricky, but you know वो क्या कर रहा है? It is reinforcing the contrast. Individual neuron is nothing complex. So it's, I would say, reinforcing the contrast. कौन सा contrast? जो यहाँ पर इस sentence में as an analogy present किया गया था. In sentence number 3, the whole, as in what is it trying to say? Whole system is equal to rich emotions. So it builds directly on the analogy which is given in sentence number 1. So 413. And then comes in the end with a technical explanation. क्या है वो technical explanation? Although the human brain is not yet understood enough to identify the mechanism by which emergence functions, most neurobiologists agree that complex interconnections among parts give rise to qualities that belong only to the whole. Now, this is the most abstract and the most scientific sentence. It talks about number 1, mechanism. Let's look at the word. It's written over here. It talks about mechanism. It always also uses an expert consensus. Kiski? Most neurobiologists. Look at this. Most neurobiologists agree that. A perfect concluding authoritative wrap-up. So the final sequence would be 4, 1, 3, 2. Now, why is this order important? Why this order works? Let's look at the structure of the paragraph. Sentence 4 introduces the concept. Sentence 1 gives an analogy. Sentence 3 gives us an application of that analogy. And sentence 2 gives us a scientific explanation. अब trap देखो क्या क्या हो सकता है यहाँ पर. If we begin with sentence number 2, although is, clearly not, sentences that begin with although should not be, really be there. You can't begin a sentence with although because it connects to something. Then if we put 3 before 1, you would say, ma'am, 3 क्यों नहीं आ सकता 1 से पहले? You would jump into nonetheless without setting up the contrast. Nonetheless आप तभी बोलोगे ना जब आप कोई इंपॉर्टेंट बात बोल चुके हो, जब आप कोई किसी इंपॉर्टेंट चीज को रेफर कर चुके हो. If you state 3 before 1, you would jump into nonetheless without any setup, without any contrast that you have already given, that analogy that you have given. So that is the base to nonetheless. Okay? So क्या कर रहे हैं हम यहाँ पे? Define कर रहे हैं, illustrate कर रहे हैं, expand कर रहे हैं, theorize कर रहे हैं. Sentence 4 ने हमें idea दिया, sentence 1 ने हमें एक analogy दी, sentence 3 ने एक build up दिया, और sentence 4 ने उसे conclude किया. So it's a pretty charming, easy question. Okay. Let's come to the next question. Let's read it together. Contemporary African writing, like The Bottle Leopard, voices this theme using 2 children and 2 backgrounds to juxtapose 2 varying cultures. Chukwemeka explores the conflict and casts the Western tradition as condescending. Condescending is looking down on somebody. Enveloping and unaccommodating towards local African practice. However, their views contradict the reality for a rich and sustaining local African cultural ethos exists for all who care to see and experience. Western Christian concepts tend to deny or feign ignorance about the existence of a genuine and enduring indigenous African tradition. Very complex sentences, but giving us clear references. Now, sentence number 4, where it says Western Christian concept tends to deny. This is a very broad, general statement. क्या कह रहा है sentence number 4? Western general concept tends to deny or feign ignorance about the existence of a genuine, this word, and enduring indigenous African tradition. A perfect opening statement. Then comes statement number 3, which begins with the word however. Their views contradict the reality for a rich and sustaining local African cultural ethos exists for all who care to see and experience. Now, look at this word. However is a giant, is like an arrow pointing backward. It has and it must directly oppose sentence number 4. So sentence number 4 is Western view denies African tradition, and 3 says reality contradicts that denial. Also, when it says however, their view, kiska view? Western Christians का view. So 4 ने बोला कि Western Christians deny Western view denies African tradition. ये देखो ये लिखा है. African tradition, ये लिखा है deny. So Western view denies African tradition. Sentence 3 contradicts that denial by saying reality contradicts that denial. Right? ये देखो. However, their view contradicts the reality. Immediate contrast. ठीक है. Then it moves to literary support. Sentence number 1 says contemporary African writings like the bottle leopard voices this theme. Which theme? Which we have been talking about in sentence number 4 and 3, using two children and two backgrounds to juxtapose two varying cultures. Now, this is an example. This is an example that demonstrates the conflict that we have just discussed. So I would write example. Example of what? The contradiction that we have just discussed. And then look at sentence number 2 that says Chukwimak ilk explores the conflict. This zooms further into the example. Sentence 1 ne introduce kara, sentence 2 ne explain kara what the author does in the text, where it says casts the Western tradition as condescending, enveloping, and unaccommodating towards local African practice. उसी एग्जाम्पल का एक्सप्लेनेशन है. एक्सप्लेनेशन टू द एग्जाम्पल, इसी एग्जाम्पल का कॉन्टिन्यूएशन. तो हमें ये बिल्कुल क्लियरली पता चल रहा है कि 1 and 2 तो पेयर है ही, एंड 4 and 3 पेयर है ही, right? And therefore 4 3 1 2 is the correct sequence of this question. Let's move forward. Also, I mean, see, in this question, what I feel is कि स्ट्रक्चरली ये क्यों काम कर रहा है. ये पैराग्राफ सेंटेंस 4 ने एक जनरल वेस्टर्न क्लेम दिया, सेंटेंस 3 ने उसको काउंटर पॉइंट किया रियलिटी के साथ. सेंटेंस 1 ने एक लिटरेरी एग्जांपल दिया, द बॉटल लेपर्ड बोल करके, और सेंटेंस नंबर 2 ने ऑथर स्पेसिफिक इलैबोरेशन दिया, ऑथर का नाम यूज करके, राइट? एंड हेंस द structurally this order works the most. All right. So याद रखना सेंटेंस नंबर 3 जो है वो however से शुरू कर रहे हैं. That's not possible. It doesn't look like a correct opening sentence. And a lot of students did, mention ki, ma'am, what if we place 2 before 1? Now, in that case, you would mention the author before mentioning his work. Right? हम यहाँ क्या कर रहे हैं, पहले हम वर्क मेंशन कर रहे हैं और फिर हम बता रहे हैं कि ये किस ऑथर ने लिखा है. ओके ओके, let's come to question number 5. Let's read the question together. Centuries later, formal learning is still mostly based on reading, even with the widespread use of other possible education affecting technologies such as film, radio, and television. Centuries later, formal learning is still. Does this look like a correct opening sentence to you? No, possibly not. Then the next sentence is one of the immediate and recognizable impacts of the printing press was on how people learned in the scribble culture. It primarily involved listening, so memorization was paramount. Sentence 3 says the transformation of learners from listeners to readers was a complex social cultural phenomena, and it was not until the industrial era that the concept of universal literacy took root. And then sentence 4 says the printing press shifted the learning process as listening and memorization gradually gave way to reading and learning. No longer required the presence of a mentor, it could be done privately. Now, out of all these sentences, sentence number 2 is the true beginning sentence. What is this? This looks like printing press was on how people learn. What is this? This is a historical trigger. देखो क्वेश्चन को, this is a historical trigger, है ना? One of the most immediate and recognizable impact of printing press was. on how people learned, a historical trigger. This is starting the event. It introduces a very, very important keyword, printing press, जिसके बारे में हम बात कर रहे हैं. It contrasts with this scribble culture, which is listening, and it sets the stage for change. So we begin with sentence number 2. Now, look at sentence number 4. Sentence number 4 shows a direct consequence of this. The printing press shifted the learning process as listening and memorization gradually gave way to reading, and learning no longer required the presence of a mentor. It could be done privately. So sentence number 4 gives us a direct consequence of printing, how through printing press, how people learned, उसके डायरेक्ट इम्पैक्ट की बात कर रहा है, डायरेक्ट कॉन्सिक्वेंस की बात कर रहा है. सो सेंटेंस नंबर 2 लेकर के आ रहा है हमें सेंटेंस नंबर 4 पे. सेंटेंस नंबर 4 क्या है? दिस इज अ डायरेक्ट consequence, right? With it says a perfect continuation, where it says the printing press shifted from learning process. It explains how learning changed. क्या लिखा है? From listening to reading. ठीक है? Then comes the next sentence. Then it moves to a long-term evolution. In sentence number 3, the transformation of learners. देखो, the transformation of learners from listeners to readers. Look over here. From listeners to readers was a complex social and cultural phenomena, and it was not until the industrial era that the concept of universal literacy took root. Now, what happens over here is that in this sentence, it calls the shift a complex situation, a complex social and cultural phenomena. Mentions a timeline also, please note it. Industrial era, universal literacy. Until, look at the timeline, until the industrial era. और universal literacy की बात कर रहा है वो, took root. So एक timeline mention हो रही है यहाँ पर question number 5 में. Okay, so it shows the transformation. It shows the transformation of listener to the reader. Then comes the last sentence, which is sentence number 1. Centuries later, formal learning is mostly based on reading, with the widespread use of other possible education affecting technologies such as film, radio, and television. Now, over here, this is clearly a present day conclusion. Sentence number 1 क्या है? देखो, ये है एक present day conclusion. Look at the chronology. Look at the chronology here. Look at the timeline which is happening. Okay. अब वो present day conclusion दे रहा है. उसने कहाँ से शुरू करा? Centuries later. Time has jumped forward is what the writer is trying to show. It wraps up the evolution. And hence the sequence is 2, 4, 3, 1. Why this timeline logic works over here? Sentence 2 gives us the origin. Sentence 4 makes that immediate shift. Sentence 3 shows the gradual transformation that happened, right? And sentence number 1 gives us the present state. Now, imagine if you begin with sentence number 1 and you say, ma'am, क्या problem है? हम sentence 1 से क्यों नहीं शुरू कर सकते? कर सकते हो, but वो बोल रहा है centuries later. Centuries later need a past reference. Possible नहीं है. What if you put 3 before 4? You would describe a transformation even before explaining what caused it. You have to first give the cause and then you have to describe the transformation. This cannot be the other way around, right? अब देखो स्ट्रक्चर क्या है इस पैराग्राफ का. स्ट्रक्चरली इवेंट, इम्पैक्ट उसका, उस इम्पैक्ट का एवोल्यूशन क्या हुआ है और प्रेजेंट डे सिचुएशन क्या है, is what it is trying to say. So sentence number 2 gives us the spark. Sentence number 4 gives us or shows us the change. Sentence number 3 shows that there has been growth. And sentence number 1 shows present day result. And hence, the correct sequence should be 2, 4, 3, 1. All right. Let's move to the last question for today. Let's read the question together. Veena Sehajwala, a materialist, Veena Sehajwala, a materials scientist in the University of New South Wales, believes there is a new way of solving this problem. Now, this problem needs a reference. Which problem are we talking about? It says this problem. Her vision is for, again, pronoun आ गया यहाँ पर. कौन है her? Her vision is for automated drones and robots to pick out components, put them into a small furnace, and smelt them at specific temperatures. Guys, this word is specific, FIC. Temperatures to extract the metals one by one before they are sent off to manufacture for use. 3 says e-waste contains huge quantities of valuable metals, ceramics, and plastics that could be salvaged and recycled, although currently not enough of it is. She plans to build microfactories that can tease apart the tangle of materials in mobile phones, computers, and other e-waste. Now, step 1, हमें क्या करना है? Sentence number 3 हमें एक problem बता रहा है. Right? It starts with a problem. What is it? That e-waste contain huge quantities of valuable metals. देखो, बात हुई है e-waste के बारे में, और वो क्या क्या contain करता है? Valuable metals, ceramics, and plastics that could be salvaged and recycled. इसकी चीज के बारे में बात हुई है. This is the context setter. Context क्या है? Introduction क्या है? E-waste. It highlights the problem and the opportunity to solve it. No prior references needed. A perfect beginning opening sequence. Then sentence number 1 introduces the problem solver, where it says Veena Sehajwala, a material scientist at the University of New South Wales, believes there is a new way of solving this problem. Which problem? The problem that has been mentioned in sentence number 3. ये problem. Recycle का problem. Salvage करने का problem. Right? So we begin with 3 and then we go to sentence number 1, where this problem के बारे में बात हो रही है, which clearly refers back to the e-waste, which is a problem. Then sentence number 4. Sentence number 4 says she plans to build microfactories that can tease apart the tangled materials. This logically follows. She कौन है? She किसके लिए? Use the noun pronoun antecedent approach. She किसके लिए बोला है? वीना सहजवाला के लिए. Right? It introduces the solution framework. What is the solution framework? कि वो microfactories बनाना चाहती है. And then it ends with a detailed mechanism in sentence number 2 that says her vision is for automated drones and robots. This is the most detailed technical elaboration. It explains how the microfactories will work. It says her vision, clearly continuing from sentence number 4. Okay. Now, so the final sequence is 3, 1, 4, 2. Now, look at the structure. इसको एक structural lens से देखते हैं इस question को. Sentence number 3 ने हमें एक problem बताई. Sentence number 1 ने एक solver लेके आया. वो solver क्या था? कौन है? वीना सहजवाला. Sentence number 4 में solution idea दिया हुआ है. She plans to build microfactories that can tease apart. Right? Solution idea दिया है. And then sentence number 2 में क्या है? Execution detail है. वो इसे करेगी कैसे? Her vision is for automated drones and robots to pick out components, put them into small furnace and smell them. So this is the execution detail which is given. A very, very clearly, a very clear thought flow build up paragraph, something which is not very difficult to catch. Now, trap alert देखो, sentence 1 से हम नहीं start कर सकते क्योंकि this problem लिखा है, it needs it has no reference अगर आप sentence 1 इसे बना दोगे. If you put sentence 2 before 4, which a lot of students did in the actual exam, you would jump into a technical detail without even introducing the main idea, which you shouldn't, right? And hence it has to be, right, first sentence number 4 and then sentence number 2. This cannot be swapped. So देखो, प्रॉब्लम है, फिर एक पर्सन आया, पर्सन के पास एक प्लान है या सोल्यूशन कह लो उसको, एंड देन उस सोल्यूशन का प्रोसेस क्या होगा. सो अगेन, a paragraph which is quite comprehensive, and it gives a fantastic thought flow. So that's it for today, guys. Thank you so much. And in the next class, we'll do new variety of questions with you, questions that are, uh, from the CAT exam, questions that have appeared in the previous ZAT exam, SNAP, Narse Munji. I would request you to type in the comment box and tell me what more do you want to discuss in these YouTube lives. Do you want to discuss grammar? Do you want to discuss more para jumble questions or para summary questions? Do you want to do more vocabulary in these uh, sessions? So your comments and your ideas and your positive feedback would be of great help. That's it for today. Thank you so much.